Hello everyone, I am Rue and welcome back to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Rue with the books. This is the video that's going to be kicking off my spooky season horror book reviews. In the TBR video that I did, I spun a wheel which had 5 separate choices that I planned to get through the October period, and out of all of those it landed on Pet Sematary. I was super stoked that it did because I am very interested in reading more Stephen King. It's a little goal of mine to increase my knowledge and my experience of Stephen King novels so that I can one day tackle the Dark Tower series. I was very excited to read some more Stephen King, and I'm really happy that it landed on this one because it ended up being my favorite Stephen King novel yet. I have Misery coming up this month too, so I'm still excited to read more Stephen King and find out if that one trumps Pet Sematary. I put a great deal of work into these videos, so be sure to press that like button to help spread my videos across YouTube with the algorithm. I would appreciate that a lot, very sincerely. Thank you. Anyway, enough yapping from me. If you are a beverage enjoyer, be sure to grab a beverage of your choice. I have coffee. And without further ado, time to get onto the review and talk about Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So I'm going to kick off with plot. Stephen King doesn't work very hard in fleshing out a very strong plot for this book, but that's okay because it is totally besides the point. What he worked on rather than plot is writing a compelling slice of life narrative about a select group of characters, and a lot of very compelling popular books follow this format, placing the characters first. So, like for example, just the first one, like Cormac McCarthy books or Toni Morrison books, they tend to follow that format as well. So, Pet Sematary in particular is about a family who move into a rural town called Ludlow. Our main POV is Lewis Creed, and we stick to his POV for I'd say like a good maybe 80 or 90% of the book, thereabouts. He moves to Ludlow because he lands a job to work as a medic, or like maybe like even like the lead doctor for the infirmary at the University of Maine. As a doctor, he sees a lot of pain, suffering, and he even encounters death. One of the core themes of this book is death, and even the word cemetery is in the title, even though it's spelt wrong in like a childlike manner. We get to see Lewis's life in Ludlow in all of its highs and its lows. First and foremost, he is a father and a family man. He's raising 2 children, a 5-year-old daughter called Ellie or Eileen, and a 2-year-old son called Gage. This book shows how when you become a parent, that becomes your biggest, most important job, and everything else becomes like a second priority. Lewis becomes so attached to his children, and he is a very good and passionate father, and you can see that very clearly. So as the book progresses, when things happen, it plays on that specifically, and very shocking and sad things do happen. Lewis forms a tight-knit, budding friendship with his neighbors, Judd and Norma, but Judd mainly. And he falls into a routine of popping around for a few drinks in the evening after he puts his kids to bed and everything, and just having a nice chat, a nice discussion, a nice relaxed time. These segments of the book felt very wholesome and relaxing because it's nice to make a friend when you move into a new area. You know, it's like kind of settling down and starting to form a connection with the place that you've moved to. And so Judd has lived in Ludlow all of his life, and so he knows about the area, all of its secrets, all of the go-to spots, all of its intricacies. And the secrets that he knows about this place are what land him in a spot of trouble throughout this book, or land Lewis in a spot of trouble throughout this book. Judd is a character with very strong, good intentions. He's very kind and friendly, and has a lot of wisdom for his age, but good intentions don't always have the best of outcomes. The pacing of this book and the plot was very good. Just as you fall into a rhythm of reading this and starting to get complacent, like emotionally, like everything is good and nothing wrong can happen, King just clicks his fingers and drops a dramatic, gripping moment that causes shockwaves in the narrative for its characters. There are about 5 important moments throughout the book which progress the narrative, the plot, if you want to call it that, and launch you right back into the grip of the story and its characters, which isn't bad for the length of the book. Stephen King is known to be quite a waffler. I'd say this book is medium in its conciseness. So the fact that there's 5 very like interesting, snappy parts, things that get you hooked back in, that is really, really good for its length, I think. It's just perfect, even I'd say. Final sections of the book are an absolute roller coaster. So much happens with pretty like high stakes. I truly felt uncomfortable reading, truly at the edge of my seat for these sections. And I think that the ending was also incredible. Stephen King really, really nailed the ending for me. I really enjoyed it. The main POV that we get in this book is Lewis. We also get a bit of time from the perspective of Judd and also Rachel when it's necessary for the narrative. I really enjoyed Lewis's character. He is very compelling, personalized, and he has like a very specific character voice that gets you to understand him as a character. He seems very cynical, sarcastic, kind of very like fast in terms of thinking and like coming up with little silly jokes. He's very reactive, right, to the situations he lands himself in. It feels very personal because we inhabit his mind. We get to read his thoughts, the stuff he doesn't say out loud. He is someone that, at a surface level, you can like. He's likable, a likable person, and a doctor, and he's someone that's easy to get along with. Um, but if you were to actually, like, if he was to say the stuff that he thinks in his mind out loud, he would be really, really annoying. But because we read what those thoughts are in his brain, it is quite funny because we're not at the receiving end of his insults and everything. However, as the book goes on and the story unfolds, we find out that he is a man with a lot of weaknesses. He has a lot of pride, arrogance, naivete, which are the reasons that he ends up landing himself in a lot of trouble in this book. He is quick to ignore warnings from both supernatural forces and his best and closest friend in Ludlow, and is willing to gamble and tempt fate in that way, showing him to be someone that, isn't good at like risk assessing and the previous said weaknesses. Rachel was a really great addition to this book too. That is Lewis's wife and the mother of his children. She is someone who has sacrificed a lot because she takes on the traditional role of a housewife and mother. We don't get any mentions of her being like employed or anything like that, which also reflects the attitudes of the past. And I'm not sure when the change was in like societal norms was changing, whether it was maybe just at the boundary of when King wrote this book or after or before. That is an interesting topic in of itself. The most compelling aspect of her character was her trauma. It starts as a bit of a mystery. So there's like things that happen and she reacts in a certain way, and you're like, that's a bit strange. Why is she reacting in that kind of way? But when King unveils her backstory, you can be incredibly sympathetic to her situation, especially because it isn't one where something bad just happened in like a day. It's not like a day of trauma. It was like her whole childhood was soured. which then leads to one incredibly traumatic moment. So there's kind of like, it's like climbing up a hill, and then all of a sudden you get thrown off the cliff. Um, and that is gonna break bones and cause a lot of pain and be life changing. Her PTSD, for the most part, doesn't affect her on the day to day, but in certain exceptional circumstances, comes back with a biting vengeance. Judd is the friendly neighbor. He has a drink with Lewis on most evenings and helps him fall into a nice routine in this new town that he's moved to. Judd is kind, compassionate, empathetic, and has some old man wisdom in that noggin of his. There's like a lot of cases where Lewis is like, "Oh, I feel this way," and Judge just knows because he's lived life, he's experienced that kind of thing. He quickly becomes best friends with Lewis, and is even like a bit of a grandpa to Lewis's kids. The nearest old man available. He is seen to form a nice bond with Ellie. Despite appearances and with the best intentions imaginable, he is the root cause of all the trouble in this book because he is the one that knows about all the local secrets and things like that. So yeah, if you want to find out why he is the root of all the troubles, you'll have to read the book for yourself. The villain in this book is the Ancient Burial Ground. It's not really a character per se that speaks, kind of, but it is something like a supernatural force that is shown to have its own intentions and its own powers. And through getting some of the local lore, we find out that it's this cursed land called the Micmac Burial Ground, thought to be caused due to the presence of like the devil, or like the Wendigo they call it. It's seen to be a great power with a lot of influence in the local and even slightly further afield surroundings and areas. It's a force that can inhabit dreams or even cause physical reactions to people that it wants to sink its influence into. I thought that this book was absolutely fantastic. It's not very scary at the core of things, unless you are a parent and the things that happen in this book are scary because you relate. But it does have some very disgusting, gross moments that just icked me out. As mentioned, this book is the nightmare of all parents across the globe. This is quite a sad book because the largest theme it tackles is death. If you're in a particularly emotional state, I probably would read this book when you're feeling a bit less emotional or a bit happier. Because to inhabit this space and think about death for a week or two, or however long it takes you to read this book, it is a lot. I found the change in Lewis's character and his desperation after the inciting incident to feel very realistic. He still seems himself. It's not like a complete 180 because people don't just completely throw every aspect of themselves away and become a completely different person just at the click of a finger. But he does feel like an exaggerated version of himself. Like he's on the biggest caffeine rush and his thoughts are just like racing and amplified a little bit. The whole final section of this book felt so incredibly uncomfortable, like he's being controlled or puppeteered in a dream, a nightmare that he can't get out of. Stephen King clearly thought through everything during the final sequences. All of the little details he just sprinkled in here and there, all of the hiccups along the way. The descriptions were so vivid that I could clearly picture literally everything inside my mind's eye. I already said this earlier, but the ending was amazing. It was perfect, literally down to the final line. If you like metal music, Ice Nine Kills has a brilliant song about this book or movie, depending on which you have experienced, called Funeral Derangements, with some very well thought out lyrics. So if you like that, go check it out. It's good. I like to do this little segment in my reviews called the Cozy Quality Matrix, in which I show a little image that I've made, showing where I think a book lands on the cozy quality matrix, which it says, do I think it's high quality or low quality, and is the book feel good or is it not feel good? Well, Pet Sematary, in my opinion, lands very high in the quality and maybe slightly off center towards the not feel good section, but not completely all the way to the end because Lewis's character voice is quite funny and you can get a few laughs here and there in the book, which does elevate the kind of emotions of like feel good for me. So I didn't feel like I was like mega depressed reading this whole book. I did there was a few bits here and there that weren't too depressing and lifted it out of the very edge there. I found this book to be absolutely incredible. Honestly, top contender for best horror novel I have ever read yet. It's not super scary in terms of the horror elements, but the more realistic elements, more realistic aspects of it are truly horrifying. When King needs to, he throws some disgusting, visceral moments that send shivers down your spine. It doesn't focus very strongly on the plot, instead giving us a very character-driven book. There were plenty of nice, light-hearted moments. Just as things got too chill, Stephen King would throw something terrible and dramatic into the fray, just to remind you what you're reading and who wrote this book. I think the pacing was perfect, and thumbs up from me for that. The characters in this book were all fantastic. Lewis, Rachel, and Judd are an incredible main three, working well in union to make this book unputdownable. Lewis's inner voice is top notch, one of the best I have ever read. He feels realistic, snarky, and if he said that stuff out loud to people, could be pretty unlikable and get a few punches. But inhabiting his mind, it is pretty funny. Combining everything I've said, the pacing, the character work, the way this book made me feel, and that I can't find anything to criticize it with, I have to go ahead and rate this book 5 stars out of 5. As I said in the intro, I think that this is the best Stephen King book that I have read so far. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have read this book, did you agree with my opinions? If you haven't read it, have I convinced you that it's worth the time? I would be genuinely very curious to find out. I haven't seen the movies, but if you have, were they any good? I would also love to hear about what you are currently reading, so please throw that down in the comments below as well. I would also appreciate it if you press that subscribe button. I work hard to make these videos, so 1 subscribe equals 1 head pat. Thank you. Anyway, until next time, Rue out.